And Kali Yuga, we're absolutely in the heart of it, in the dark night of the soul, so to speak. The next yuga has not come yet. We still have to fight this. We have to fight for dharma, because it's the only thing that the world really desperately needs to, I think, have some kind of peace or sanity. But just to get back to my own experiences, my Hindu values, whether they are of feminism, parity, equality, how we treat the environment, how we treat animals, ahimsa, all of those wonderful um, concepts I have held very dearly in my heart, and they've helped me navigate. So I can be in any part of the world, I can hold my own. I know that my values are compatible with the West, with the rest of the world. They will. They are as moral as anybody else's. Pound for pound, probably more. If you're talking about a real purity in some way, real, it's there. We must know that we uphold very, very high values for humanity, and we must sort of openly talk about that. um, that we're not only are we compatible with the West, we actually complement the West. I think we give the West some of what they're missing, because there are some voids there, and I think we sort of complete the cycle. And we are not clashing with them at all. I think the West, in combination with Sanatan Dharma, is really the only thing that can keep uh, global peace, can make global peace a real thing. So I think the world needs to realize that. Uh, Many do, but more, it needs to be. This needs to be common knowledge. Um, and I just think also post COVID, this concept of Maya is very important. It's all Maya. This is all an illusion. We are in a movie, so you must um, be detached to what's going on. You are not your identity. You are not the event that you're going through, right? You're just the Atman that is sort of floating around and part of the Brahman anyway. So just know that you are divine, and have peace in your heart. And you, of course, we have to do the karmas, and we have to do what we need to do, and dance with life itself. But I think the bigger picture of Maya becomes incredibly important, especially post COVID. And I think the world is now starting to maybe get a taste of that kind of perception. And maybe it's our duty to openly also share that this is a Hindu perspective, the matrix, so to speak, and that it's a very beautiful and holistic way to look at life moving forward. I've always said that this is the Indian century. I think the two most important players in the world are going to be the US and India, and their dynamic is the most important geostrategic relationship moving forward. And we must all know this. So I think as Indian Americans specifically, we need to be proud of that, and we need to uh, not be ashamed to be vocal in a very humble way, as we know best, but be proud of what we bring to the table, and know that what we bring to the table is actually very, very important and needed, and the world is looking for it. um, I think we make America a better place, and I think we need to know that, and ultimately America will also acknowledge that, and sort of really understand that we are one. So just wanted to share a little bit about my life and my beautiful experiences navigating, and how Hindu values have been my strength. I proudly say that. And as I move in life, bigger and bigger doors are opening, and I'm realizing that my Hindu identity is becoming the forefront, really, of what I do. I remember the time when people would say, "Where are you from?" And I would say, "I'm Australian, I'm from Dubai, or I'm from Los Angeles." Uh, and now I don't say that. I say um, I'm a Sanatani, or I'm proud Hindu, or I say, I'm Indian who uh, has made LA my home. And, so my identity, I think, is very clear, and I know where my spirit lies, and I know how to uh, really encapsulate everything else around me and make everything work. So I just want to leave you with that. If you have any questions or anything like that, please ask me. I'm here to answer them. Very honored to share a stage with you. I hope that some of what I have said will inspire you and empower you. And I hope that it just increases your own pride in your faith, in your culture, the legacy of Sanatana Dharma. I've always said, just remember that we've been here since the very beginning of time itself, and we will be there until the very bitter end. That is just how it's going to be, no matter what. So with that, I thank you, and I am very honored, and I just want to say dhanyawad and namaste.
Thank you so much, Preeti Ji, for speaking to us today. I think a lot of the panelists and audience members can really identify with your experiences. Thank you again. I now want to introduce you to the moderator for the high school panel, which will address what it is like to be a Hindu in America. Anish Bhairav Sundaram will be our moderator. Anish graduated from UMass Amherst with a major in microbiology, a minor in nutrition, and a certificate in data visualization. He is currently in the medical device industry at Boston Scientific as a quality systems doc specialist. Anish, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Parabrahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, HinduPACT and VHP, for this great opportunity. Today, I would like to introduce the panelists for the high school panel. Rutvij Hole. Rutvij is an executive committee member of Americans for Equality, PAC, which ensures that Americans all have an opportunity for success when it comes to applying for colleges and for jobs. Rutvij is also an intern for HinduPACT, where he helps manage their partnerships. In addition, Rutvij also works with various other Hindu organizations, such as Hindu Education Foundation, where he helps ensures that Hinduism is represented accurately in textbooks, as well as Support a Child, a VHPA initiative which sponsors education for children all over India. He's looking forward to this panel and to get involved with our community in any other way that he can ensure that Hindus, like all Americans, are treated equally in the United States. Thank you, Ritvij. I'd like to introduce Anjali Iyer. Anjali Iyer is a freshman in high school. Her hobbies include playing soccer, participating in marching band and concert, baking, creating art, playing musical instruments such as the piano and the alto saxophone. She loves learning about the world and around her and tries to make a positive impact wherever she goes. She recently volunteered in a program called Hello India, where you talk with a college student from Tamil Nadu every day. This helped her come out of her comfort zone and expand her language diversity. She also helped set up and volunteer as a guide in the health fair of the Hindu Temple of Greater Cincinnati. She's really excited to be one of the panelists and is thankful for this opportunity. Thank you, Anjali. And our last panelist, Hamsa Tadpatri. Hamsa Tadpatri is a freshman in the William Mason High School. She was a member of the NJHS and is currently part of the MHS Honor Society, UNICEF, FBLA, and is the community lead of Red Cross, plus the workshop leader for the student government. She has been a volunteer tutor for SSTGC for 2 years. She always loved watching people experience events that she creates and believes that she can bring kids together by making events that they will keep close to their hearts. She has several fundraising and leadership experiences throughout her recent Among Us tournament, food drive, and adapted sports events. Thank you, Hamsa. So to start off this panel, I'd like to start with the first question. So to the panelists, do you find difficulty in finding a balance between both American and Hindu cultures, especially being in between?
Yeah, sure. So I can start off then. One thing I would say is that, it's really a matter of, what things can you keep, what things you have to make an effort to keep, and then what things, are just kind of impossible to keep in that sense, right? Like, for example, traditionally my family were a big devotee of one local saint called Gajan Maya. So, yearly we try to make an attempt to go to his town Shigao every year, but obviously being in the US, thousands of miles away, that isn't exactly possible. Other things can be kept, but they require a little more effort. For example, vegetarianism. When you're in Bharat, that's very easy because much of the food is vegetarian. Much of the population, even though they may eat meat occasionally, the vast majority, I'd argue, is vegetarian as well, in most sense. But in the US, that takes a bit more effort to keep since the vast population does just eat meat. So that's something that I keep some dedication to. And then some other things like, wearing a tilak and all of that, those things, they're very easy to do, but you kind of have to have that courage to do them. So it's really a matter of finding the courage and knowing what you can do and what you really can't.
I see. That's a good point about the courage, especially that it takes to represent your own faith. Hamsa or Anjali, either would you like to share your experience as well, finding the balance between American and Hindu cultures?
Okay, I'll go. So personally, I don't find any difficulty in finding like an equilibrium between my Hindu culture and American culture because we do limit our rituals and processes at home or just with a few friends and family members who share like a few common religious festivals and events such as like the Ganesh Utsav, Dashera, Holi, Diwali, and several others in like nearby temples. I'm also like proud to say that I'm associated with several Hindu groups where I practice Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu Sahasranam, Lalita Sahasranam, as well as like some scripts from the Vedas. I'm associated with Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, where we organize like several weekly events where we like brainstorm sessions such as yoga and meditation. We also provide like different ways for kids to develop leadership like leadership skills, such as going to Matthew 25, organizing a food drive where we contributed more than 1,200 pounds of food and donated it to our local food pantry, and as well as hosting an annual Guru Vandana event to let our teachers know about our Hindu culture and values. So as we all know, like America is widely spread with different cultures and different cultures and beliefs. So like if you want to project yourself into like religious attire, it raises like a lot of questions. Like many people are curious and I have to like explain the significance of like different things. But it's kind of frustrating sometimes. Hence, I lean towards like wearing American clothing, such as like a shirt or a pant. But like to be one among others. For instance, I just recollect like a situation that happened with like several of my friends started to ask me questions about why I wear a bindi, and they thought it looked like a big pimple. So I tried to explain like the significance of a bindi, but later I just started wearing a smaller bindi. So just my experience.
I see. So you're able to connect with your culture a lot, but it also takes some effort, especially going back to this point of courage, kind of to explain why we do some of the things we do in our culture. I see. It's a great point. How about you, Anjali? Do you feel like you could relate to this?
Oh yeah, personally, I think I have a pretty good balance between Hindu and American culture. My parents are pretty religious, and we do celebrate all Hindu festivals, and we have our own puja room and things. There's one thing that kind of sticks out for me, like especially that I can find a weird, like it's kind of just uncomfortable. For example, so when I'm reciting shloks nowadays, it's kind of hard for me. There's like a few times when I'm learning new shloks, it's kind of hard for me to pronounce the different words. Like I can say them, but I just feel like awkward saying them sometimes because my mind is more like connected with English than it is to the shloks. But ever since I was young, my parents have been teaching me shloks, and I can recite them and things. But over time, as like life came in the way and all that, it's not been as frequent as I would like to, which then makes it hard to like remember everything and say it with like the full way that I would like to say it. So I would just say the one thing that like kind of sticks out, it would be like that I can tell there's a difference between like when I would be reciting compared to when my dad would be reciting them right next to me, I can like see a difference, and it's kind of weird for me, but like that would be the only like hard challenge that I think I have personally. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, kind of uh, not having that immersive environment to be familiar with some of the words does bring another extra layer of difficulty. And this kind of brings us to our next question of, have you faced any obstacles or challenges in school representing your culture? And do you discuss this to your parents or family, these kind of challenges that you guys kind of just mentioned?
Yeah, so as I've previously mentioned, I've dealt with like many of my friends asking and other people asking me questions about my bindi. So as it was like a little bit bigger than what I wear now, I tried my best to explain the significance of the bindi to my like my nearest friends and teachers. But later, I've been like questioned by other classmates and external people during events and concerts. That's where I had to like rethink and discuss with my family for other like alternatives for the situation. And later we all agreed like for me to try wearing like a smaller bindi to maybe avoid like so many questions from others.
I see. So kind of like managing the questions by kind of understanding that they're going to have a lot of questions, and just kind of like still representing your culture in the most uh, in the least obstructive way,
Right,
right?
yeah.
So kind of like hard to explain sometimes. Are you able to tell these to your parents at all?
Yes, I did discuss this with my parents, and that's how we kind of came up with wearing maybe like a smaller bindi to avoid the questions. But yeah, I do talk to my parents about it. Yeah.
That's great. How about you, Ritwij?
Yeah, so definitely the challenge that Hamsaji has faced are very similar to the challenge that I faced in that sense, except with on mine it's a tilak rather than a bindi. But aside from that, another factor that we have to keep in mind is the teachers, right? So I wasn't here for I wasn't in California for sixth grade and seventh grade, so I can't comment on those main years. But in my ninth standard, when they began discussing colonialism in India, for example, you saw one teacher make some immediate anti-Hindu comments claiming that, ISS was the ones that killed Gandhi and all of that. So at that point, we really just had to fight against that by getting, a few karyakartas together and explaining what exactly the process was. And then we changed his mind. So, are these challenges going to be here? Yes. But in reality, if we can get, a team together, like we were able to get probably 8 or 9 HEF Kayugaitas, and we just sit up like 12 o'clock in the morning writing 8 to 9 page essay on this and give it, then in that case, we really can change at least 1 or 2 minds. I think that effort at the very least is worth it. So I would encourage all of you to go ahead and try and take that effort to be able to ensure that we are represented equally in schools.
That's great. That's actually great. So you feel as although there's a lot of misrepresentation and difficulty, when you can explain, it's the feedback is heard well.
Yeah, because it's not out of like any malice, right? One of the things you have to keep in mind is like all of these teachers, none of them have any anti-India agenda or anything. None of them want to, destroy India or break India. That's, the politician's job. These teachers, they're just going through what they see online, and what they see online is largely going to be anti-India and anti-Hindu. So because of that, then after that, we just have to address these concerns and really explain, okay, I get where you're coming from, your intentions are good, but here's the actual content. And once they see that, then a lot of them actually apologized to me and said, sorry, we completely got this wrong. We won't be teaching it like this. Here's the curriculum, and we moved on from there. That's all.
Wow, that's great. I'm glad there's you've taken a lot of initiative. It takes a lot of effort,
Dhanyawad.
but it changes everything for everybody else coming into the school as well. How about you, Anjali? Would you like to add?
I think I personally have faced only like two challenges. One is taking Indian food to school. I feel like this is kind of like for a lot of people that I've met have gone through this. If I bring some kind of like dal or something that doesn't smell like your normal American food, it raises a lot of questions. Like people are like, "Oh my gosh, why does it look like that?" or "Why does it smell like that?" And I kind of have to explain to them. They're not too rude about it, but it was mostly in like elementary, middle school that this happened. Now that I'm in high school, people don't really like care or ask about like what I'm eating. They're like, okay, you're eating, that's cool. But especially in elementary and middle school, people, I feel like they were kind of judgmental on what I brought to school just to eat. It's like just food. Everyone eats it. So I feel like it should have not, that should really like not happen. But yes, it doesn't look the same as your classic hamburger or like chicken tenders or whatever they serve at school. But that was one thing I faced, which then led me to ask my parents, and I would bring less subtle, like, or more subtle foods, I guess that you could say, like just like a roti or something. Another problem I get, not really problem, but a challenge I would face, especially in like elementary school, I will put hair oil in my hair and go to school. Just like, you know, it makes your hair thicker, grow. And my parents were super adamant of getting my hair really long and thick. When I was in second grade, I like faced like people would just ask questions as to why my hair was like wet but not wet, because it looked wet because the oil is like glistening. And some people would be like, why is your hair so greasy? And I would try and explain to them that it's just oil, like it's not like actual grease or anything. But it was just something that like it made me uncomfortable. So yeah, I when I discussed that with my parents, we like set it up so that we would just do it on like the weekend so that people wouldn't have to like ask a bunch of questions or anything. So yeah.
That's a really interesting point with the hair oil, especially. So kind of making way to not make it so visible. But how did that affect you? You know, kind of having to make way for your own faith or your own belief in respect to the outside culture.
So for me, I wasn't embarrassed. I would just be very uncomfortable to like be in public with that, because that kind of affected me, the way people would just ask me like, why is it greasy but it's not? And it was just like, it made me uncomfortable. It definitely impacted me. I kind of like stopped wearing hair oil for some time, and it actually like I could see it in my hair because it wasn't as thick anymore. So I think now I'm okay with it. I'll just go in public. I'll be like, yeah, it's hair oil. It's not anything crazy, but yeah.
So you've gained a lot of confidence because you've had to stand up for your own
Yeah.
faith. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So this kind of gets to my second, like the next question too, is do you feel as though your peers or your friends kind of support you, you know, for example, if you were to wear hair oil or even to bindi or tilak, you know, they kind of help you in that process, stand up for you, or do you feel like you'd have to, you're kind of alone in this?
I think my peers do respect like the Hindu culture, so I don't have any issues with them, and I try to tell them like the real values of our traditions, and like for them for them to accept our culture, I guess. So I also try to respect their cultures and beliefs, but rather I try to make friends with people who who are like-minded. So
That's great. So you kind of find a little community, like a community that you can kind of relate with. That's awesome.
So the question was about, other cultures and everything, right?
Yeah, or especially, you know, do your peers support you, or do your friends support you, especially standing up for your own, you know, standing up for Dharma, Sanatana Dharma?
Well, I have an interesting, thing on this. Most people, when you look at it, they don't care, right? Their thing is, oh, I just want to hang out with my friends, or I want to get my A or whatever, right? The backlash, the strongest backlash for you is really going to come from the Indian groups themselves. So, when I was like, one time when a teacher brought up the caste system and I began explaining, I posed them a few questions. Okay, if, this whole caste system is true, then, why do we see people like Ved Vyas and Valmiki becoming, like writing the Ramayana and stuff, even though they came from, was supposedly lower caste backgrounds? And though everyone that, rose up against me was mainly, from that Indian group. No one, actually, quite a few people from, the other groups, like, Koreans and all that, Israelis, they actually supported my grade. They were like, he brought up good questions. But the Indians were the one that really fought back against it. So that's one thing you have to keep in mind, is that the danger doesn't come from other groups. The danger comes from, Indians. On the other hand, with other cultures, it seems that I've had to get much more civil discussion. Like in my seventh standard, there was one Muslim kid, and we would spend, our lunches discussing the similarities between Hinduism and Islam, where the two, differ, where the two have common ideas and all of that. And, those discussions were still to this day some of the most valuable I think I've had in my life so far. So you get a lot of things from other groups, but from my Indians, generally I tend to be more disappointed than satisfied, to put it mildly.
So a lot more backlash from our own community. Do you feel like you can address some of those questions? Like, for example, if someone was to ask you, what does a shloka mean, or things like that, do you feel like you're able to find the knowledge on that? And
I mean, like, aham Sanskritam janami, so, I can address them, but the vast majority of my population, they forget Sanskrit, they don't know the meaning of basic shlokas, so half the time, they don't tend to be able to address them as much, but, you see one or two people. The only problem is they're very small compared to a percentage of, like Christians that can explain the Bible or Muslims that can explain the Quran or something like that. So that's the issue.
So you feel a lot more knowledge is needed out there, a lot more Hindu exposure would be crucial.
Exactly.
Sounds like.
Yeah, and if you can like teach everyone, Sanskritam, or at least, make them fluent in their mother tongue, because, a lot of our shlokas and, everything is in that as well, then at that point, that's going to really help, build that strong base that we need.
That's great. How about you, Anjali? Do you feel like, you're able to kind of have support with your friends and your peers, or do they also kind of cause more issues to you in showing your culture?
For me, I'm really thankful and lucky to have a very diverse friend group. Like, my school is predominantly like American and white people, so there's only a few people who are like from different countries and things. So I'm pretty much friends with all of them. Like, my whole friend group consists of them, and we all are very interested in each other's cultures. I guess I could put it like that. They ask questions, like they don't judge me on anything I do. They'll ask like if I'm dressed up in traditional Indian clothes for like some function or something, they'll be like, hey, what is this? And I can explain it to them. And I feel very lucky to have that. I feel like the other people that I don't really talk to in my classes or anything, they don't really ask, or they don't really like acknowledge that I'm Hindu or anything. They're just going on, because in high school, I feel like we all have our separate groups and we like to stay in those groups. So there's not too much question about my culture, but I do think between my friends, I'm able to explain it and like represent my faith. So,
so with a diverse community, you can feel like, but kind of expanding on that peers question, especially you guys in high school, is things like prom and dating, where that's kind of really mentioned within the community, especially like in school. Do you guys find some sort of like a difficulty in those kind of contexts, especially sharing that at home culturally, or are you able to kind of find a balance?
I mean, I'll say one thing, if you've ever seen the cost of a prom ticket, like, we're going to registration, everything, I saw it was like $150 or something, I honestly think it's a money-making gimmick to a point where I've talked to other people. It really seems like only, those white generations that have been in this country for years, they place importance to it. Forget about our kids in general. Like if you talk to Chinese kids, the Korean kids, all of those first generation kids, none of us care about all of that because, if you look at it, it's clearly a money-making gimmick to anyone that doesn't have the nostalgia behind it. So, I don't think it's that big an issue for our community in the first place.
Okay. That's an interesting point. Yeah, kind of that the other communities also are not too much into prom, but I'd like to know you guys' thoughts on like dating too, and how you've kind of managed to that, especially within our culture where most of our focus is purely just studying, which is especially at our developmental age.
I mean, personally for me, I think that's all, like that's just Maya that I moved beyond at this point, there's no point in fixating on all of that when you already have, studies, when you already have a dharma that's, being constantly attacked on all sides. Like all of our focus, especially when, the amount of karyakrtis we have is so little, the amount of time we dedicate to fun and all of that, that's, less time we have to be able to work on this. So we really need to focus 100% on just protecting our dharma at this point.
It's true. Dharmo rakshati rakshataha.
Satyameva.
I'd like to know, Hamsa and Anjali, your thoughts on that.
They have asked me about that before, like basically the same question you asked. I just say like we usually nobody really like dates, not that I know of. So I just say no, I'm not really interested in that kind of thing. So yeah, that's probably all I tell them.
Okay, so you're pretty you're strong on your decisions, and you're strong on your faith. That makes
Yeah.
sense. So to the next question is, what do you feel that would help you represent your faith? And are there the proper resources? So I know Ruthvich earlier mentioned, a few other organizations, and both Hamza and Anjali, you guys also mentioned the organizations you guys are in and the community. But do you feel as those kind of answer your questions, or are you still not able to sometimes explain, and do you feel like there's like a blind faith aspect in it?
I mean, I think that with most faiths, in general, like, I'm a comparative theologian, so I look at this question a lot that you brought up. I think with most faiths, there is a certain blind aspect, right? Like in Christianity and Islam, there's so many contradictions in what they're saying that, you kind of do have to allow for, the Descartesian blind faith aspect of it to be able to. By them, as with Hinduism, at least, on the Vedanta, Sampradaya, right? Because that's the one I personally follow and I've been studying a lot. I very much explain it through science, right? So when they ask, okay, how can you prove that, Brahman is real? I say, do you believe in protons, neutrons, electrons? Yeah, they, usually say yes. And I say, okay, that's I Brahman for you. If they say, how do you believe in karma is real? I say, do you believe that every action has an equal or opposite reaction? That's karma for you. They just put it in English. So, as long as you explain it with science, which it really is, we've just put science in, we've just done it all in Sanskritam, 5,000 years before these people got to it. If you just explain it with the science, then at that point, I think you're honestly home free. You don't need to say
Yeah,
there's nothing more.
that makes sense. And I mean, that takes a lot of research too, to kind of understand that, our Vedantam, our Siddhantam is, I mean, even astrology for us is math based, and we created those
Exactly.
things, and it's very logical.
Yeah.
Hamza and Anjali, do you feel like you also have the resources in the location you guys are in?
Yeah, I think there are a ton of resources for like our Hindu culture, from like scriptures, like audio, video, and like different texts. So and then there are also like several groups in the U.S. that like voluntarily like teach to the interested like students about our culture. So I definitely do think there are like tons of resources to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Hamza. There's a bunch of classes available, like in my location. Like you can learn about the Bhagavad Gita and all the shloks and all that. You can recite them. There's like groups and stuff for that. So I think the resources are available. Yeah.
To kind of expand, there are a lot of resources, but do you feel like they're necessarily sought out or publicized well, or what do you feel like would help you, especially, for example, the thing you were talking about in food? One of the comments that our attendees said is that our food is nutritious, and in kind of explaining them the health benefits. For example, when I was growing up, turmeric was something that wasn't necessarily a household item, but today it is, and there's so much good health behind it. So do you feel like, what would help you, especially in your school or in your life?
I mean, one of the things you have to keep in mind is like, I think, a while back I was talking with one Rajuji Guttala. He's a Karyakarta in San Diego office. We were discussing how we can really explain to people that, don't want to know. And one thing he said was, I don't get the obsession behind it, right? If someone doesn't know, like, unko chodo, right? There's some people that aren't going to buy what we say no matter what, just because they're so entrenched in, the societal norms that they've grown up in. And so I don't see why we have this certain need to justify every single action that we do to, like American society. Like, we're Hindu. This is what we do. We have reasons why we do it, but I'm not going to spend, all of my time trying to convince, non-Hindus that everything that I do is good. If you don't want to do it, that's on you. Just let me keep doing what I'm doing, and then we'll be fine. I don't see any need to just constantly justify every single action of ours to other people. That makes us look a bit weak in that sense.
That's a great point, actually, that it's our faith, and it is our belief, and it doesn't necessarily always have every single reason that we know. There are reasons, multiple reasons, but back to your point of, it's our faith. Don't need to always explain it, but also the fact that it's our people that sometimes aren't really supportive, and it's important that from a young age that we all support each other. Great
It's
points.
just to add on, it's not necessarily that, when they say, right, why do you do this, we don't explain it. But it's more when they try to start an argument and when you realize at a certain point, you're not going to be able to convince them, right? Like if a Christian, missionary tried to come up and convert you, I don't think you're going to succeed that much in converting them to Hinduism or something. So don't even bother trying. That's the only thing. Explain it once, maybe explain it twice, answer their questions. But after that, if it's clear, just going to be a back and forth, he said, she said, then, leave it on. You have better things to do.
Great point. So there's a question asked. I'd just like to ask this question: do events hosted by diversity groups within schools helps in spreading awareness? Learning geography or introducing food from India. Kind of like, do you feel like that would help if schools kind of had one day lemon rice, in the menu or some things like that?
Actually, I remember in like fourth or fifth grade, we actually had this day where like a student's mom who's actually Indian got all kinds of different Indian food. She got like lemon rice actually, and like gulab jamun and some other things. And we actually like, you can choose not to have it, of course, but we actually had that for lunch, which was actually super awesome. So yeah, we've done that before.
That's fantastic. How about you, Anjali? What's your experience like?
Yeah, I feel like if that was there, it would be very helpful to like show how Indian culture is. Like the food is really good, and some people just never tried it. So if we just like show them and be like, "Hey, just try this if you want." Like they don't have to, obviously, but actually in second grade, my mom was one of like the speakers who came into our class, and she like dressed up in all like Indian clothes. She brought in a bunch of Indian jewelry and like little gimmicks and things from India, at like Indian shops that she went to. And she actually came in our class and she like presented, and she was like, "This is how it is." And a lot of people actually came up to me after that and was like asking me like, "Oh my gosh, this is how you live at home? Like this is so cool." People were like actually really interested. Of course, this was in second grade, and people like, things might have changed now, but I think if that recognition was there, then it would like actually really help. This is going back to like your other question also. You said like, what do you think that would help you represent your faith? One thing I would say is like our Indian holidays that we celebrate. At school, no one really knows about any of them. Like they've never heard, they maybe heard of it once, but they don't know any like in depth or anything. We talk about like the 4th of July or like Christmas and all that. We all like recognize those holidays, but we don't really talk about Diwali or Holi or anything. So I think that if like our schools would recognize them, like obviously we don't need a day off, but if we did get the day off, that'd be totally fine. But like the thing is, like if they should like maybe like taught it or like talked about it, it would bring more awareness to it. So that's another thing. But yeah.
That's great. And I mean, that's true because, I'm not sure about your schools if they have some sort of like a Hindu group or Hindu club, but kind of having our influence in school curriculums will have a big impact for you guys. And you guys have done a lot of great things with the tools you've had. So it's have to wrap up this side of the webinar, but thank you everyone for your great responses. And as you guys are doing, Dharma Rakshati Rakshataha. They who protect Dharma will protect you. Namaste.
Thank you so much to our moderator, Anish, as well as our high school student panelists. That was also a beautiful performance. Thank you so much. Our next panel is composed of college students and is moderated by Devina Manik. Devina graduated from the University of Cincinnati with a Bachelor of Business Administration, focusing in marketing and directing for film and television. She has worked on numerous feature films with established actors such as Zac Efron, Bruce Willis, Anthony Mackie, and Lily Collins. Davina has produced and directed an award-nominated short documentary and has also won several awards for her classical training in opera singing. Welcome, Davina. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Sohini. I'll now introduce our college panelists before we get started with questions. First, we have Amrut Bhairav Sundaram. Amrut is a junior attending the University of Massachusetts, Boston, studying finance. In his spare time, he helps his father do pujas at the Boston Sri Kalikamba Temple in Bellingham, Massachusetts. Sonia Kapoor. Sonia Kapoor is a community organizer, writer, and graduating senior at The Ohio State University, studying computer science and Asian American studies. After graduating, she will be working for Target in their technology leadership program in cybersecurity and web development. She has completed field research in Uttarakhand on the potential for radical ecological democracy and the limitations that systems of oppressions like caste pose to sustainable development. She is a member of Ohio Progressive Asian Women's Leadership, a statewide intergenerational political home committed to building AAPI feminist leadership in Ohio. She is currently the program coordinator for APIDA cohort, a weekly space for Asian, Pacific Islander, Desi, and American students to engage in identity development, political education, and community building. She is also currently a writer in residence at 12 Literary Arts Baldwin House residency. Divya Joshi. Divya Joshi is a fourth-year student at the University of Cincinnati, majoring in health sciences. She's excited to meet everyone and share her experiences on culture. Diya Joshi. Diya Joshi is a freshman at the University of Cincinnati as well, majoring in medical sciences. She is also excited for this event and is excited to share her perspectives on culture. So I'll now begin with our second panel questions. The first question for our panelists: after attending college, do you identify yourself more, about the same, or less as a Hindu after attending college? And if so, why? We'll go ahead and start with Amrut.
Namaste, everyone. So throughout high school and college, I mean, my family background, my parents are very religious. My household is a very religious household. And so religion, I mean, Hinduism has always been a part of my life, and it's always been a constant in my life. And so I would actually say that I identify the same throughout, I mean, relative to high school and now. And I commute from home to go to school, and now during COVID, it's all remote. So especially now, I mean, it's just Hinduism everywhere. So it's not much of a change.
That's great. What about you, Sonia?
I think that I identify very differently than I did in high school. And to give some context, I also grew up around Sikhism and the Sai Baba temple. And my mother has always been very spiritual. So I think that also inflects my relationship with Hinduism. But for the purposes of this panel, I'll try to talk about Hinduism specifically. So before college, I think for me, Hinduism and the temple were kind of a place of refuge, a place to feel dignity and pride, where otherwise there was a lot of discomfort, being othered, for being brown, for being different. And so I think for me growing up, Hinduism was always just like a place of comfort and a place to kind of engage in culture. That was also kind of more a surface level engagement with those kinds of issues. And then I think in college, I really wanted to dig deeper into Hinduism and what that meant. And I think for me, that meant going to India and studying it and learning that Hinduism was attached to caste, which was not an archaic thing, as I learned growing up, but a very relevant current day system of oppression that functions analogously to race, the way that race does in the US. And so now as I think about my Hindu identity, I really try to engage in unpacking what that means, regardless of how spiritual or how often I go to temple. I'm really just trying to understand how to not perpetuate that kind of system of harm as it exists in India.
That's great, Sonia. And that's really awesome that you went to India specifically to study more and learn more about our culture. And just expanding on that a little bit, being at OSU, which, I think most people know is a very diverse university. How did you bring some of those teachings, back to college with you?
Yeah, sure. So before I went, I tried to engage in the Hindu community as it already existed at Ohio State. So it's kind of hard to get a foothold in the Indian community. There's really only one of two routes, and one of the big ones is joining a dance team. And I even tried to learn how to dance, but unfortunately, I have two left feet, so that didn't work out for me. And then the other route is organizations like Yes Plus, and there's Hindu Yuva on campus as well. And when I went to those organizations, I kind of quickly realized that they conflated Hinduism with one set of politics, which is being in alignment with the RSS, being in alignment with Modi and the BJP. And I found that those weren't values that I could align myself with. They tend to be casteist, Islamophobic. I experienced sexism in those spaces. And so that after those experiences, I went to India. And when I came back, I started developing a community of South Asians who also had struggled in those spaces, but really wanted to inquire more deeply into like what it meant to be a Hindu or what it meant to be South Asian in the United States. And so, yeah, I'm still working to build that community and learn more together. It's called South Asians for Solidarity. Yeah.
Thanks, Sonia. That's amazing that you were able to learn and bring such an experience back. I think something that a lot of people immediately think about in regards to OSU is, there are, of course, lots of Indians there, and we know that it's very big for that dance culture and the Bollywood culture. So that's really interesting, that if you don't fit that specific mold, you maybe don't have a place. So that's great that you were able to, start something for the rest of the people who didn't necessarily fit that mold. Divya, how do you feel being in college? Do you feel more, the same, or less as a Hindu after going to college?
Hey everyone, hope everyone's doing well. I would probably say I feel more like a Hindu I'm currently a fourth year in college, throughout college, because in both high school and college, I was like super involved in my temple and I did like Bharatanatyam. But having gone through schooling through like a predominantly white school, and like always being around like white people and stuff like that, I always tended to separate kind of like my culture with schooling. It wasn't like I was embarrassed. I just didn't want to call that attention to myself. But once I entered college, and throughout college being in such a diverse environment and just seeing everyone so enthusiastic about their culture has really made me super enthusiastic and want to talk more about my culture and just make me more proud about my culture. Like a quick short story. So one of my best friends that I made in college that's white, her mom, she went back to college, and in one of her classes, she had to interview someone that was of a different culture. And I was so honored that my friend immediately thought of me because I always talk with my friend about my culture. And so that was super exciting. So it was supposed to originally be like a 30-minute session of just us talking about my culture, but it ended up going over 2 hours. Like we could not stop talking. Like she just kept asking questions, and I could tell that she was so interested in learning about my culture. And I also like could not stop talking about it. Like I would be like, oh my God, I forgot to even touch about the foods. I didn't even talk about the like the festivals and stuff like that. And just being in the diverse environment of college, I really I didn't care if people were judging or any of that, but I was like super proud of it and like really embraced it. So like it really helped me grow in general.
That's awesome. So then overall, would you say that the friends and the people that you have surrounded yourself in college have been more diverse than high school?
Yeah, I would say that. In high school, they were also open-minded, but it was just kind of going back to like I didn't really want to call attention to myself and I just kind of like stayed away from talking because like a lot of them have never like heard about this kind of stuff and I would be scared like they're like what will they think if I tell them about this? But like in college definitely I've had more like a diverse friend group and it really helped me be more comfortable even for preparing myself for the future having someone that's like never heard about Hinduism talk about it. So that's been really nice.
That's great. That's wonderful that you've been able to, build that confidence in college and feel more open about, sharing your culture and experiences. Dia, have you had a similar experience to that as well in regards to your faith?
Yeah, I think so. Mine's pretty similar. In high school, my high school was like pretty diverse, and I usually surrounded myself with like people that were like me and all of that. So I felt like all of my beliefs or a lot of the way I thought was dependent on other people. So that sort of shaped my beliefs because as soon as I got into college, I was like presented with like this whole new pool of people and like all new friends. So I've like seen myself developing, my own ideas for Hinduism, my own beliefs. And I feel like in that way I've grown a lot and I've had like a more like individual mindset and like I've developed those like strong beliefs. Also like through like our BAPS like temple that's local, we've been becoming like more involved and I've been like taking more responsibilities and stuff like that. And I feel like that strengthened me as a Hindu just because I'm in college now and the fact that like I still like think that's like super important. And the last thing I'll say is that college, at least UC, has like all these events that are like school wide and they're sort of like about Hinduism, I guess. It's not super religious, but they'll have events like Holi, Garba, all of that. And that makes it more normal to people that are going to college because it's like, oh, I'm going to go to Garba tonight. And then because of UC's programs and all of that, people might know what you're talking about and it might make the conversation more comfortable.
For sure. And that's great that you've, been able to go to some of the college events, maybe not this past year. But would you say then that just transitioning from high school to college, you've then, in a sense, felt less peer pressured into exploring your own faith a little bit more?
I think so. I mean, there's been like a lot less pressure to like really know exactly like what you believe in all of that because everyone's just so open-minded at college and I really think that it's easier to develop your own idea of culture, your own idea of Hinduism, and I feel like that's really beneficial.
Definitely. So then moving on to the second question here, do you have similar challenges in college that you had in high school in regards to your Hinduism and culture?
I mean, for me, I think challenge-wise, I think I've been lucky in the sense that like people, even in high school or in college, people. I mean, my college is very diverse, and even in high school, people didn't. I mean, people ask questions, but I don't think there's very few instances where I thought they had bad intentions when they're asking. Mostly, I mean, it's just usually it's just genuine curiosity. But in terms of like challenge, is that I think I kind of identified with uh, an earlier speaker that who was saying that there were things in textbooks that they didn't really couldn't think that was kind of accurate, and so they took it up with the school and their teachers and they had a conversation. I had a similar instance in high school where I felt that I felt that the things that we're talking about in terms of Hinduism aren't actually like the things that are being I mean, we didn't give like a good example of it, and I thought kind of put us in a bad light. And I didn't think it was they did proper research when they actually went to because there were some like, simple facts that were mislabeled and misinterpreted. And so I took that up with my teacher, and my teacher she's like, oh, no one brought this up before. That's why like I didn't mean to like offend you, and we had a conversation similar to that. But and then in college, I took a women and gender studies class, and we were talking about the split of India and Pakistan. and just there were certain instances where there were certain instances where uh, they took I felt that they took certain things out of context in terms of like honor in Hinduism, and when women when there was one example where in one village the Hindu women of the village jumped into a well because they did not want to be because of the violence that could happen, and so to protect themselves they jumped into the well. And the whole article was talking about this honor, the term honor, and how this how it actually ended up harming people. But I think like the discussion that took place in college at that time, they kind of took it out of context, and like the Hindu perspective on honor, and how they kind of made it feel it was an oppressive thing. But I mean, the way I was taught, at least, it's not necessarily that. It could be in certain cases, but the honor in general is more of a term, more of a concept that that brings like dignity to the people who use it. So it's not like the same thing, but those are like two specific challenges that I've kind of faced in high school and in college.
Yeah, that's definitely really interesting, with those specific, courses in both high school and then going into college as well. But I think that's great that, you feel confident enough in yourself to stand up and say something about that. Sonia, how do you feel about any challenges that maybe you faced in college versus high school?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for that question. I think for me, I didn't really feel like I experienced a lot of challenges in terms of Hinduism in high school or before college. I think that for me, there's a lot of access to learning and just being in community with my family that helped me. I do think that there were challenges outside of being in Indian spaces, like earlier speakers alluded to. I think in college, it's been a challenge, as I mentioned earlier, to be connected to Hindu spaces that align with my values. And I think that I've spent my entire college working to develop that community and hopefully leave something behind on campus for other people to fold into. But I do think that a lot of South Asians in general either separate themselves from their community or they have trouble aligning with those values. And I think that we need to build more spaces for like political education and deep reflection on Hinduism.
Right. That's great. I agree. I think we definitely need, more spaces to talk about everything and challenges and, just the history and everything. So that's great. And, I want to make sure that we do have time to answer some questions just from everybody tuning in as well. So quickly, I want to go on to Divya India. What challenges have you faced just being, in college now from high school, and have you guys been able to openly discuss any of those with your parents?
Luckily I haven't had like too many like big challenges. Like what I would consider challenges that I would have would be like maybe like not being like telling like a professor or teacher that I can't go to class because of like Diwali, or like helping out a temple, or just being like, if I'm eating Indian food or something like that, having people like question like, what are you eating and stuff like that. So like I've had like the same, I guess you could call like challenges both in high school and college, but I guess I approached them differently. Like in high school, like if you asked high school me like what I was doing like after like school or something like that, I would just be like temple. But if you asked college me, like I became like more proud to like talk about my culture. So like if you asked college me, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to temple because we have this like big celebration coming up this Sunday, and I'm like teaching a dance, so I'm going to be helping out there. I'm also going to be helping set up and stuff like that. Just been like more confident in like talking about it. And answering like the parents and family question, I just feel like since like my parents and family, like they were born and raised in India, like they know like so much stuff about our culture and stuff like that, I'm more comfortable in college talking about like any challenges that I face in terms of like being a Hindu in like America.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And going back to like the challenges, I feel like this is true for a lot of people, but whenever we're super small, we don't really think about other people, like what they're gonna think. Like I remember like my parents taught me like talent show dances that were like Indian, like all throughout elementary school. Like I was just up there on stage doing my little like Indian dance, and like there was like one other like Indian like in my class at that point, like in that like school. So it's like very different. But I think that with a lot of people, as they go into like middle school and early high school, they start thinking about what other people might think. And I don't think the challenge has changed. Like Divya said, it's like, you know, bringing lunch to school that's Indian, taking a day off for Diwali. Those challenges didn't change, but they seemed a lot harder in middle and high school or early high school. I can't speak too much about college since I've only like been here for a semester, but I definitely do think I'm a lot more comfortable with who I am now and talking about my culture more easily because I mean, they're just like all new people, they're all ready to learn. And talking about discussion with my parents, I think they're very open to discussion and our relationships definitely changed like before, you know, whenever we were younger, you know, relying on them for a lot of things, but now it's more like they're our friends and we can talk to them about any challenges that we're facing as we get into college. And I feel like that's a big step from high school. And additionally, like obviously I have Didi or like Divya, and it's easy to ask her questions because she's already gone through college. And you know, ask her like, how'd you tell your professor you're going to Diwali and stuff like that. It's nice to have her and have like other Sanchalikas. Those are like sort of the leaders at my local temple. They're always there for guidance, and we have like campus discussions every month, and we just talk about things at college. And it doesn't have to be related to Hinduism, but it's just nice having that support system.
Yeah, that's awesome that you have that support system and, you know, especially an older sister to maybe follow in the footsteps of a little. But that's great. I think across the board, it seems like, you know, as we've gotten older, maybe we've become more open and comfortable in ourselves to express ourselves. So that's fantastic. But a couple of questions I'm seeing here. One specifically for you, Sonia. How do you correlate the Vanra/Jati and caste, given that caste is a Portuguese word?
Yeah, I feel like that's a pretty simple question. I don't know if it quite fits with the general ideas of the panel, but caste would be an English translation for Varna, and Jati. Jati would be more specific denominations, and then to me, Varna is you know, the four broad categories of caste groups. So Brahmin, Vaishya, Kshatriya, and Kshatriya, and Shudra. And to me, when I'm talking about caste, I'm talking about those systems. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for clarifying. And then, you know, another question, maybe going back more into the overall theme, have any of you encountered anything like Holi against Hindus? And if you have, how have you handled that?
I mean, I have not, so yeah.
I've never heard Holi against Hindus.
Yeah, you know, that's something that I specifically have never heard either. It's one of the questions that I received from someone tuning in, so I wasn't sure if anyone else on our panel had heard of that or encountered it either. Okay, so across the board, that might not be as large of a thing that we would have heard of. Another question that we just got in, do you guys believe that Hindu identity is overwhelmed by Bollywood and just the culture maybe?
I definitely think that to some degree it is. At least like a lot of the organizations that I see that are like, you know, like Hindu Student Association, anything like that, a lot of it has a lot of the things they have in Bollywood, and that like like instead of maybe looking at more of the education aspect of Holi and stuff like that, it's more of just like a party, just like throw color at each other, which is like obviously the fun part. But maybe in like the description and stuff like that, it might be important to include the meaning behind it, the meaning behind that huge outing everyone's going to. So I do think to some degree it is influenced by Bollywood.
Yeah, going off of what exactly Dia said, having been in college for like 4 years and just kind of like seeing like the like cultural environment, like because we have so many like Indian cultural groups on campus, but like as Dia was saying, that like it is kind of more like a party. Like for instance, like every year you see one of like the UC Indian clubs does like Navratri, and rather than going more towards like the cultural and like the meaning and actually learning about Navratri, it's literally like a party. Like no joke, it's a party. And also Holi is just like people just show up with colors and like I've had like I've asked like I'm like, oh, you've been to UC's Holi, right? And they're like, oh yeah, I have. We just like threw colors at each other. Like that's literally what they've been told. They're just like, oh my god, we're throwing colors at each other. I'm like, so that's all you guys did? And they're like, yeah, that's literally what we did. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So yeah, I definitely feel like more of like the Bollywood, like the fun side is like more seen, rather than I feel like we should be concentrating more on like what all this stuff means as well.
Yeah, I think for me, I do think about that a lot. And I think from my understanding, where that comes from is needing to find places to feel pride after, existing in a world where that there's a lot of white supremacy. But I think when we do simplify religion not as something, not as a place to enact their values, and just as these, colorful events, it is not giving us the chance to really engage in each other with each other as we really could. And then I think in a worst case, sometimes it's us upholding casteist traditions that we don't know are casteist, that we don't mean to do that, but because we don't know how to engage in or more deeply understand Hinduism, we are ending up doing these sorts of things. I mean, I love a Bollywood movie. I'll watch it all day. But I also like want to have deeper conversations with people. And I really love what Thea said earlier about how we can create culture for ourselves, because I think that kind of gives us a window out of this kind of rut of only having one image of what it means to be a Hindu or what it means to engage in Hinduism. So I really love when you said that.
I think that being overwhelmed by Bollywood, I think that's a reality in terms of like people our age, putting stuff together. And I can't. I mean, I don't think I'm informed enough to speak about like our community as a whole. But like I think like in terms of like people, younger people, like getting together and doing something in terms of like Holi and things like that. I just think that's just like the mood of college itself. Just like people want to have fun, and so like that's why it turns out like the way it is. But yeah.
Yeah, I think those are all great points. And thank you all for sharing your views on all that. Just to keep the entire webinar moving along, I am going to end this panel right here. So thank you all you panelists, for these great responses. I think it's great for everyone to hear your viewpoints and for you to share those as well. And thank you all, everybody else watching, for your questions, great questions. And sorry we couldn't answer all of them, but you had fantastic questions and panelists had great answers to those as well. So I will go ahead and pass it back on to Sohini.
Thank you so much to our moderator, Divina, as well as all of our college panelists. And thank you also for that beautiful item that we got to just see right now. I now have the opportunity to introduce my friend and the next guest speaker for this event. Siddhartha Jayanti is a PhD student in computer science at MIT, where his research spans the fields of distributed computing, cryptography, game theory, and machine learning. Siddhartha graduated from Princeton with a major in computer science and a minor in mathematics. He also has a master's in computer science. Siddhartha was a member of Princeton Hindu Satsangam and was the president of MIT's Hindu Students' Council chapter. Siddhartha is bilingual in Telugu and English, learned French in high school, and speaks and reads and writes Sanskritam. He enjoys studying ancient Sanskritam texts on mathematics and poetry, a disciple he was introduced to by Field Medal Award-winning mathematician Professor Manjul Bhargava of Princeton, and writing poetry in Telugu and Sanskritam. Siddhartha's mother was his first teacher, and he believes his mother's decision to devote her time to teaching him and his sister about language, culture, and Hindu dharma was foundational to his growth. Siddhartha, welcome to the virtual stage.
Namaste, everyone. Thank you, Sohini ji, for introducing me. Thank you to Jay Bansalji and Visakha ji for inviting me here. My Hindu identity is dear to my heart, and Hinduism brings great joy and inspiration into my life, and has been fundamental to my journey as an individual and as a scientist. So I'm honored to have been given this opportunity to share a few words and thoughts on being a Hindu in America. I grew up in Hanover, New Hampshire, where our family was one of very few Indian families, and I was the only Hindu student in my grade. My school was a very welcoming place. The teachers were thoughtful and caring, and my peers were friendly and inclusive. Yet, I was no stranger to the seeming duality between my traditional Hindu household and the culture of the small New England town that we were situated in. There would be questions. What's that thing on your forehead? What's that stuff you bring for lunch? Why do your parents not let you go to school dances? Why are you vegetarian? Some of these questions were asked by friends, and yet others were questions that I was seeking answers to in my own head as I navigated through high school. At times, they were difficult questions to deal with. Alas, it's not so easy to feel like you're different from your friends, like there's a whole side to your life that you can't make them understand, and to often feel like you need to defend your family, culture, or way of life from prying questions and doubts. But in retrospect, they had the invaluable side effect of making me reflect on my culture, discuss our way of life with my parents, and debate the many ideas that emerged. And this deep thought and my understanding and experience of Hinduism that emerged out of it are what have made my culture and spirituality such an uplifting pillar in my life. Three qualities that have stuck with me throughout my life are curiosity, reflectivity, and a deep urge to enjoy life. In fact, these are the qualities that led me to pursue a PhD and become a scientist. All science starts with a simple question. And if the questioner finds joy in thinking about the question until he seeks a satisfying answer, a beautiful understanding emerges. And that is the wonder of science. Take Newton, for example. Apples were falling from trees millions of years before Newton arrived on this planet. And surely people knew that apples fall from trees for millennia before Newton. But when Newton saw an apple fall, he went a step further. He wasn't satisfied with the everyday explanation that everything you drop falls to the ground. He dug deeper. He wanted to know why. He wanted to know how. And his thirst for knowledge wasn't quenched until he understood better. And out of his deep thought emerged an understanding that we call the law of gravity. He saw that the same force that makes an apple fall makes the moon go around the earth, and the earth go around the sun, and the sun go around the black hole in the center of our galaxy. And with this knowledge, we have built rockets and roller coasters, bridges and Mars rovers, airplanes and drones. This rich tapestry that we have come to take for granted was all made possible by deep thought and reflection. A scientist's free-spirited thinking and his daring belief that he could see something deeper in the everyday event of a falling apple. When we reflect freely on the principles that govern the physical world around us, we call the emergent understanding physics. When we reflect deeply on ourselves, the people and life around us, and the human spirit, we call the principles we uncover dharma, and the subject of study spirituality. The goal of this spirituality is atma-jnanam, self-understanding, and the deep understanding of this field of knowledge, which our ancestors have compiled in the Vedas, Itihasas, and Puranas, is one of the great accomplishments of our Hindu tradition. While the Vedas are vast as an ocean, there are three fundamental principles that we learn from them that I am particularly proud of and want to share with you today. The first is freedom. The freedom of thought, expression, and pursuit. Hinduism encourages free thought. You can see God as the playful Krishna, the steadfast Rama, or the enlightening Saraswati, all of the above, or some other way entirely. A Hindu can follow the path of devotion, bhakti, the path of knowledge, jnana, or the path of action, karma. All doors are open, and our ancestors have carved out paths for people of all inclinations to progress in the spiritual journey. The Vedas say, Ekam sat vipraha bahudha vadanti. The universal truth can be understood through many paths. The second is the principle of unity and universal value. Hinduism sees that every single person, regardless of race, gender, circumstance of birth, and anything else, is inherently valuable and is filled with an ability to tap into an ocean of happiness within. In the Isavasyopanishad, the Vedas say, Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyevanupashyati sarva bhuteshu chatmanam tato navijugupsate. He who sees the divinity within himself and realizes that the same divinity pervades the world around him will cease to despair. The third is universal compassion. Hinduism teaches us to seek well-being not only for ourselves, but also for the entire world. In the Mahopanishad, the Vedas say, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani paschyantu, ma kaschit dukkhabhag bhavet. The whole world is a single family. May everyone be happy and peaceful. It is these and related principles that build the foundation of our Hindu and Indian culture. And the beauty and universality of these principles has been felt throughout the world. They have given inspiration to great intellectuals of America like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, to great scientists of the West like Robert Oppenheimer and Erwin Schrödinger, and to innumerable everyday people that seek well-being and enlightenment through our yoga, dhyana, and meditation. I know I did not talk about any everyday problems and speed bumps that we Hindu Americans face in school. Alas, it's hard to talk about specific problems and solutions in such a short span of time. I did, however, talk about my understanding of some foundational and deep principles in our Hindu dharma. And it is these principles that underlie our culture and percolate from our culture to the organization of our communities, and from our community to the structure of our families, and from our family to the behavior of ourselves. It brings me strength and pride to know that my Hinduism and the everyday Hindu activities that me and my family do flow from such fundamental truths and values, and to know that my culture encourages questions, learning, and progress. There are still questions about particular Hindu practices and rituals that I might not be able to answer, but the confidence I have in the foundational principles of my way of life make me feel comfortable to face questions regardless. If I know the answer, I give it, and my friends learn something new. Otherwise, it's always okay to say, I don't know, and continue to live life just the way I like to, just like my friends do. No one knows the answers to everything, and that's okay. I'm deeply grateful to my parents, my family, and my community for nurturing and answering my questions. My mother has a master's in economics, but chose to be a stay-at-home mom, so she could spend a lot of her time and energy in teaching me and my sister things and answering our questions. My father is a professor, but he always makes a lot of time for family, to teach us science, to discuss life, to play sports. And the community I grew up in was filled with kind aunties and uncles, like Natarajan uncle, who taught me some parts of the Vedas, and his wife Kamala auntie, who would always take good care of us. To all of my high school and college friends out there, I hope you make the time to ask the hard questions and search for answers and make the most of your Hinduism. There's a lot to be proud of in your culture. There's a lot that can elevate you and contribute to your personal happiness and well-being. And there's a lot that you can do to enrich the world around you when you are rooted in Hinduism. But also remember that you don't always need to know the answer to every question someone asks you. If you live life by your values and are confident in who you are, people will respect you for it. To all the parents out there, we rely on your wisdom and take it to heart, even though we might seem like we're complaining all the time. So thank you. Om Asatoma Sadgamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you so much, Siddhartha, for speaking with us today. I would now like to introduce the coordinator of HinduPACT Ohio, Vishaka Manikji, to give a vote of thanks.
Vishaka ji, you're on mute.
I'm so sorry. Namaskar, everyone. I hope you have enjoyed this wonderful webinar by the youth and our future. I thank you to everyone, especially I hope you enjoyed the entertainment program, the Ganesh Vandana by Avni, the Bharatnatyam dances by Diya and Divya. We are also, please don't leave, we are also having another song presented by Sharanya after I'm done speaking. So on behalf of HinduPACT and our entire team, I would like to extend a vote of thanks to all of you who are watching this webinar. I would especially like to thank all the speakers, the panelists, the moderators, and especially the host, Sohini, for making this webinar a great success. You all did an excellent, wonderful job. We extend our gratefulness for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and your opinions. You all have set a precedent for the future efforts of our invaluable work on advocacy, awareness, and true knowledge. Namaskar to everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, and until we meet again next time, stay safe. Take care and namaskar.
बदमाश हो तुम, थोड़े नादान हो तुम, थोड़े बदमाश हो तुम, थोड़े नादान हो तुम। हम अगर ये सच है हमारी शैतान हो तुम हम अगर ये सच है मेरी भगवान हो तुम थोड़े नादान हो तुम बदमाश